I'm rather fond of coffee and walnut cake, but what about walnut ink? I've got a bottle that I bought from the shop, but how hard can it be to make your own? This time of year, walnuts are pretty plentiful and we happen to have a tree in our garden, so I've been out collecting them to see what I can do. My name's Liz Chadderton. I'm a watercolour artist based in Berkshire, but I also love line and wash work. So I'm always on the lookout for some interesting inks, and Inktober is just around the corner. So please join me and we will make some walnut ink. We'll test it out, see how we can improve the colour, see what happens when we add iron to it, see whether it's water resistant, and then try it in pens as well as brushes. To make our walnut ink, we need green walnuts. And all I mean by green walnuts is walnuts still in their skins, because it's the skins that we make this from, not the nut. The nut, which will look something like this, can either be kept and enjoyed or left outside for passing squirrels. So walnuts, when they are ready, start to split like this, and they should come off the nut really easily. You may notice my particularly attractive gloves, and I am a big believer in having mucky fingers, but walnuts will stain your fingers brown and it will take weeks for it to come off. So even I don't want totally stained fingers. If your walnuts aren't split, just use a knife to prise the skin off. So I know this one is coming off nice and easily. You may find that if they are a bit young, it takes more to chop them off, or a bit will stick. So like this is sticking, it wasn't quite ripe. And you can just carefully, without slicing your fingers, just take off the outside. And I am putting them in a very old pot. If it's an old rusty pot, that's even better, because the rust will actually help the whole recipe. But mine is not rusty. This is definitely not your best Le Creuset pot. This is something that you don't mind, definitely not using for food ever again. How many walnuts you need is one of those impossible to answer questions. How much ink do you want to make? Just remember that, a few millimeters of ink, an ounce or so, goes an awfully long way. So we're not going to make gallons, unless of course you're going to get commercial about this. If by any chance you cannot find walnuts, you can make ink from acorns. So I might do that in a future video. You can see how the split ones are so easy to get off. But it's a waiting game. You either get nice ripe walnuts like this, or the squirrels get them. And it's just possible that one day you'll look at the tree and think, oh yeah, I'll pick those tomorrow. And you'll come along tomorrow and there won't be any left because the squirrel has spotted them too. And hey, squirrels have got to hibernate and eat over winter, so we can't begrudge them. And if you're worried about taking the squirrels' food, of course, you could put the nuts back outside. Now these are from our garden, and they are really small this year. It's been such a warm summer. The nuts have, just not developed to their usual size. If they're all a bit black and yucky like this, do not worry at all, because by the time you've cooked it, you are just going to have a load of black mush. Obviously, being terribly careful, these gloves are hideous. Being very careful not to cut yourself in the process. Okay, there are all the husks. We now have to just cover that with water. we can add a little bit of baking soda to it to help it mush down and shorten the cooking time. So let's put that on. Yeah, I've just put that water in there and already it's looking a bit brown. So I've got some of that baking soda. I don't quite know how much to put in. So I'm going to put in a teaspoon and a pinch for luck. And I'm going to cook that, hoping it won't smell disgusting, for say half an hour. We'll start with half an hour, see how brown it's looking. Might need to top up with a bit more water. We'll just see how it goes. This has been boiling for half an hour and it looks like a witch's brew. But let's grab a paintbrush and a bit of paper and see what it's like. Okay, it's brown. Bit thin at the moment. So I reckon another half an hour wouldn't be a bad thing. Then I'm going to just let it cool down, probably leave it overnight and sieve it in the morning. We can then concentrate it a bit more, heat it a bit more if we need to, and give it a filter. Then we can do a little bit of experimenting with adding some iron to some of it, adding a bit of gum arabic to some of it, and seeing where we end up with. But say at the moment that's rather a nice colour and we just want it potentially a bit darker. This cooked for an hour yesterday and I've just left it overnight because I ran out of time just to cool down. Now I'm going to strain it through a cheesecloth and see what comes out. I'm about to go out for the day, so I'm going to leave it to drip in peace and I'll squeeze it out later. Avoid using anything plastic because it'll really stain. So I've just put the cheesecloth over the top of a glass jug. It's been dripping for 8 to 10 hours, but there's still loads more to come out. So I'm squeezing all that black mush and I'm ending up with about 300 millilitres. And that is your basic ink. So we've got something to compare our inks with. I have got this commercial one, Roi de Noir from Correct Art, made in France. I don't know what's in it. It's walnut ink. So it's a nice warm brown, looks a lot darker when we actually write with it. This is just watered down so we can see what that's like. In my little pot, I have just got some of our ink. And that looks quite pale, or paler than the commercial. And let's just water that down. But rather a nice colour. Let's see how it writes with our dip pen. So what should we just call that? Walnut. Oh dear, splodge. Sorry about that. And it works perfectly well in our little dip pen, doesn't it? But a lot paler. I have basically boiled up some of our ink to evaporate, and I just put a little and then put it in the microwave until it's been reduced by about a third. And look, that's so much darker now. If your ink comes out looking a little insipid, put it back in the pan, boil it up and concentrate it. So what shall I call that? Walnut reduction. Sounds like something you eat, doesn't it? And again, that looks pretty dark when you use the dip pen. I rather like that. Then wondered what would happen if you added a little iron to our ink. Because when you're making iron gall ink, you add iron and it reacts with the tannins and darkens the ink. So I have got this, which is iron sulfate. I just added sort of a spoonful of the iron sulfate to my ink. I happen to have that because they use it as moss killer in the garden. The easiest thing is to get an iron tablet that you would have if you were anemic. crush it up and then mix it in, and it totally changes the colour. Look, it's made it a lot darker, a lot cooler, a lot darker in terms of that colour. So that's with iron. When you're writing, it looks pretty black, doesn't it? And my next thought was, can we improve the behaviour and flow of our ink? I've got some, you have to believe me, this is gum arabic. It's an incredibly old jar. Usually gum arabic is pretty clear gum. This is really dark and old. So I have just added 1 drop to that. Gum arabic is what you make watercolours with. It's a binder, and I wondered if it would help the properties, you know, help it flow better, just see what it would do to its behaviour. So this is iron walnut ink. There we go. So the gum arabic hasn't changed the colour at all. Does it flow differently? Not noticeably, I would say. So I probably wouldn't bother with the gum arabic. Let's see how waterproof this, or how much it lifts. I'm not expecting this to be waterproof because commercial, yeah, look, commercial walnut ink, it moves. So I'm just using a clean wet brush. Let's lift it away and you can see how much it lifts. Right, try our walnut ink. In fact, it doesn't lift quite as much as a commercial, does it? Let's try our reduction. Yeah, it lifts. Now, what about when we've added the iron? Certainly reactivates and it lifts, maybe not quite as much as these. And then I wonder whether that lifts more or less. Hard to tell. There isn't a huge amount of difference. So they will all reactivate with water. I think my favourite is definitely the walnut without the iron, but just reduced down so it's a bit darker. I really like that colour. But obviously if you want a darker ink, I guess if I put some iron in this, I would get a really dark ink. Why don't we try? So that's probably quite a lot of iron to go in such a small amount of ink. But we'll see. I'll just give that a good mix round. Have a look. Oh yeah, that is dark, isn't it? Let's do a little drawing. So I think this would be great fun for line and wash work. Certainly wouldn't be adding watercolour on top of this. I would use washes of the ink to do a sort of monochrome, and I think that would be lovely. I think it might be rather lovely for portraits, and even mixing in with like washes of coffee, because coffee gives this lovely warm brown sort of colour too if you use it as a watercolour. So you could have a coffee and walnut watercolour of maybe a coffee and walnut cake. Wouldn't that be fun? The final thing to say is that this is absolutely a living ink. So it will not be unusual that you'll see some mould growing on this with time. It won't affect it, so just get rid of that and you'll be fine. If you want to preserve it, you could add a little bit of rubbing alcohol. You could add a little bit of vinegar. You can keep it in the fridge. Or what you can do is get some cloves, because cloves have an antibacterial property, and just put, I don't know how many, that many, few cloves in there, or even a drop of clove oil if you've got the essential oil. I haven't got that, but I have got these in my kitchen. So I am going to pop those in there, and hopefully that will keep any sort of growth at bay.